Hi, and welcome to another episode of Reinventing Your Home. My name is Ross, and in this week's video we're making a couple of baseboards with hand tools only. Whenever we're building cabinets, we always end up with a gap between the bottom of the cabinet and the floor, and the way we normally deal with that is by adding a kickboard. Recessed under the cabinet, we usually use plastic clips to attach it to the legs, and that way it's removable. However, there's a more traditional way of approaching that problem, and that is by adding a baseboard. Normally we do that when we want to match the baseboard to the rest of the house, and that way the cabinets look like as if they've always been there. And this is exactly what we're doing on this project, and because I only had to make a couple of small lengths, I've decided it's a good opportunity for me to bust out my hand tools and make the baseboards that way instead of using any power tools. So as with any wood project, we start with some rough sawn timber, and the first tool we need to use here is the jointer plane. So that was the big wooden plane. That is what gets your board straight and flat. Then once this was done, I can go ahead with my number 4 smoothing plane. Just take some fine shavings here. I have my number 4 is finely tuned, so it can just go over the surface and just finish it off, but it doesn't have to. You don't have to do a lot here. Most of the work has already been done by the jointer plane. And then once this is done, we can flip it over and do the other side. Now, because it's kind of repetitive, I would save you from watching that, but it's exactly the same process. We're going over with the jointer plane, and then we're finishing it off with the number 4 smoothing plane. And then I had to get one edge straight, and I do that by using the jointer plane again. So we put it on the vise, and I do several passes with the jointer plane. Now, whenever possible, I like to do full passes from start to finish with the jointer plane. However, it's not always an option, especially if you're working on longer pieces. But in the next shot, you'll actually see how to check if your edge is straight. So what I'm using here is a 6-foot level. Mine was bowing slightly, so I had to take a little bit off the both sides because it was bowing in the middle. And then we check it again. I'm happy with that. And then once this edge is straight, we can actually mark the position for the rip cut. We do that with a combi square on both sides, and that is depending on the height of the skirting boards, because we do want to match it with the rest of the house. And then we can do a rip cut. Now, depending on the height of your board, you have 2 options basically here. You can either plane it down to the line, or you can trim off some material and then plane it down to the line again. In this case, I thought it'd be easier for me to do a rip cut because there was quite a lot of material that needed to be planed, and we cut it just before the line, leaving some material that needs to be taken down with hand planes. Now in here, you'd see something interesting. So as I was cutting it, some tension was being released, which was causing my saw to be pinched. So what I'm using here is a tin opener, and it serves a function of a riving knife in a way. You can do that with a hand saw, because hand saws don't really have riving knives as opposed to modern power tools. Anyways, back to planing. So we put it on the vise here, and then what we got to do is just bring it down to the lines. Now, when I'm working with the jointer plane, I would like to leave it slightly above the line. Then I would come back with the number 4 smoothing plane and finish it off that way. So the reason for that is I'm using my jointer plane to remove most of the materials, get the edge straight, and then I would use the number 4 smoothing plane to get the edge square. Now, this is a baseboard, so it's not super necessary to be perfectly square. If this board is going to be used to make furniture, then it's a whole other story. However, I thought it wouldn't hurt if I get it square. So what we do here is we test with a little square, and there's a specific technique which you will see me doing in a second, and that's me pinching the front of the plane and then using my finger as a guide, so I can make sure that I'm taking just a little bit of material on whatever side needs that. So that's why as I'm going forward, I keep checking it with the square and just removing material on whichever side needs that. So that's the technique that we get. Again, not super necessary for this kind of project because this is a baseboard. It's not going to be jointed with another board, so not really a problem. But I thought it wouldn't hurt, so that's why I did it that way. And then the next thing after we get the board square and sized up is to start working on the profile. So one thing is we clamp it on the bench here. I have to work backwards because the molding planes are designed to be used right-handed, and I am left-handed unfortunately, but it is what it is. So this is the molding plane that we're working with. And then the thing with them is you have to start working from the end of the piece and work your way backwards, because otherwise you're risking taking too much material in one go and then ruining the piece. So you start working from the end and do several passes and gradually work your way backwards. Then once you're pretty much done, you can do several full passes just to finish it off, but you will see that in a second. In the meantime, I have a question to ask you. Now, most of my projects are work I do for customers, and for them I kind of have to work with power tools because it's more cost effective that way. However, I do have an appreciation for working with vintage hand tools, and when it comes to creating videos, I would not really mind creating projects entirely with hand tools. So if that's something you'd like to see, please leave me a comment and let me know. I would really appreciate your opinion on that. And then once we're done with the molding, the last thing we need to do to finish it off is to do the sanding. You can do that with the sander, it'd probably be a lot easier. However, for this video I've decided to stick with the theme of doing it by hand, so I've sanded the whole board by hand, which you'll see in a second. Unfortunately for this project I couldn't take any videos of the final fitted cabinets on site. It just wasn't convenient, so you'd only see me offering that piece to the cabinets on my other workbench. At the moment it's oversized board, we're cutting it on site when we're fitting the cabinets. This is the end product, and this is how it's supposed to look once it's fitted. Thank you for watching to the end, and I will see you on the next one.